Good morning, everybody. This is Tina Greenbaum, the CEO and founder of Mastery Under Pressure. And we're back for another wonderful episode. We're into starting our third year of Under the Hood. And delighted to have Kellan. Kellan, tell me again how to pronounce your last name.
Fluckiger, very complicated.
Fluckiger. So Kellan Fluckiger is our guest today. And Under the Hood started when I did a TEDx talk and I was talking about these things that are under the surface, under the conscious mind, and how they impact us in our later life. And all the ups and downs that happens for some of those patterns that are really great, and some of them that kind of hit us in the face that we have to take a look at. So I welcome Kellan you, and I'm going to read just a little bit. You've got a very long bio.
Well, you can skip parts of it. Use whatever makes sense.
I certainly will. I have it already highlighted here. So Kellan is an entrepreneur with 19 books, 10 of which are Amazon bestsellers, 90 songs on Spotify, and a 3 times #1 on Billboard. Sounds impressive. Yes. And I have to say, Kellan and I sat next to each other at a conference, and the entire time he was writing. So I got a little taste of how you create, just constant taking the information and writing it. So his backstory is a battlefield through depression, addiction, and a near-death experience, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about. With 30 years of C-suite experience and now 15 years as a coach, a speaker, and an author, Kellan's only purpose in life is to help people discover and serve with their divine gifts. With an 890 plus episode podcast, Your Ultimate Life, an LA talk radio show by the same name, a TV show, Creative Saves the World, and regular speaking engagements, Kellan helps entrepreneurs and messengers melt barriers, move mountains, and mobilize superpowers to rise up and create all they dream. So with that, Kellan, welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm a little bit blushing, but okay, thank you.
It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. So I have a couple questions, and I always start with this one. So tell us a little bit about your family of origin, if you would.
I was raised in a 2-parent home that looked pretty normal, middle-class-ish, a little bit lower, but middle-class-ish. We never wanted for anything, and it was fine. I heard we can't afford that a lot, but we never wanted for anything. The interesting part was that my mom got married young, and she was very fanatic about religion. And so the discipline with which I was raised today would be felony child abuse. And it was all in the name of you have to. I'm serious. I say that sort of glibly, but it's absolutely true. I remember in high school getting dressed last in the locker room because I didn't want people to see I was black and blue. Wow. And so like that serious. But anyway, it left me with 2 things. One, believing that the rest of my life needed to be spent proving to my mother that I was okay, because she was principally the administrator of it. And 2, with a complete certainty that I wasn't good enough and never would be. And so I lived with undiagnosed, untreated MDD, or, different shrinks have called it different things, doesn't really matter. Some warped view of my own worth and value for all of my life until I was 52.
And I've been in this field for a long time. So mentally...
MDD is major depressive disorder.
Oh, okay. I've never actually heard it from MDD. All right, there we go.
That's what's in DSM-5. Anyway, it doesn't matter. One of those contraptions.
I got it.
Different shrinks called it different things. But anyway, the bottom line was I was addicted to self-loathing and self-sabotage. So in my effort to prove I was okay, I created a lot of success and then would burn it down. And that's now into my adult life. So family of origin, we had 6 kids. I was second. My older sister got a lot of discipline that when I would even see it, I would cringe and because she was a girl, right? And I thought, you can't do that to a girl. I mean, at least I'm a boy. And we had that sort of girl-boy thing, which is less so now. But I was horrified at the things that I saw, even though I got that and worse. And there was not only physical, but, verbal, emotional, that kind of stuff. And that's how I grew up. I got pretty good grades in school because I was scared not to. And was blessed with some good brains and some musical talent. And I left home when I was 17, convinced that I needed to spend my life proving I was okay. And that's kind of the family of origin story. I don't have good relationships with any of my brothers and sisters except my older sister. And as I have gone through recovery and creating myself again, she has, she's the only one that really understands. There were 6 of us, and they were in 2 groups of 3, older 3, younger 3. The younger 3, my mom finally grew up. And so the younger 3 had a completely different growing up experience than the older 3. And so when I wrote the book Tightrope of Depression, which was the story of my experiences, one of my younger sibs, chewed me out for doing it and denied that those things happened. And of course, they didn't experience any of those kinds of things.
Right.
But my older sister, she knew. So, that's kind of the history of family of origin.
Wow.
I was taught to work hard. My
So that's what I was going to ask you. So that was really, really the obviously the most challenging and the greatest imprint. But what were some of the behaviors that actually worked for you?
Oh, I was taught to work hard. Work hard, you can create things. My musical talent was developed in sort of a warped way, but I played several instruments. I played the piano since I was 5. I taught piano since I was 17. So, and the funny part is later in life when I wanted to be a musician and own a recording studio, that was evil because musicians were bad. See, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 60s, and so that was right in, hippie central, and that was completely the antithesis of everything that was supposed to happen in life. So, there was just these juxtapositions that were fatal for me because I desperately wanted that. Music was in my blood. It floated through every cell in my body. And that's how come all the music now, but I couldn't do it. It was not okay. And I owned a recording studio for many years. And at one point I had to choose, and I shut down the studio so I could pursue the career. And that ruined my life because it lived as this churning underneath until everything fell apart in 2007.
Yeah. So that inner conflict. Yeah. How did it show up in work? So again, you had 15 years of, or how many years working in companies and corporations? How did that show up?
I had a 30-year career in the energy industry in the US and Canada, including C-suite positions and, big shot stuff. And how it showed up was I was never happy. I always felt like the only way I could get attention was to misbehave. And that was the only time I could get real attention. And so I ruined 3 marriages. I dabbled in drugs here and there, and then at some points became seriously addicted. At one point, I had a $3,000 a week cocaine habit, and I was in and out of rehab at different times, and but also would create big successes. So it showed up in self-sabotage. So I would create big success, and then I would trash it, like do something to trash it.
Right.
I didn't think about it, but then I just kept doing that sort of thing until, for 35 years. So I left home at 17 till I was 52. I just sort of lived that roller coaster of self-destruction and then recreation. And every time I did the recreation, I wasn't really happy because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I was doing what I was supposed to do.
So were you aware? Hi, Bob. Wonderful to see you. Were you aware, Kellan, that there was this inner conflict that you just didn't know how to get out of?
Absolutely, I was aware of it.
Just kind of.
I knew there was some. I didn't always focus on I want to be doing music. I just knew I wasn't happy, and that no matter how much money I made and how many things I owned, I didn't care, and I was focused on the pain, and then the pain of disconnectedness. I felt disconnected. I remember at one point in that long string of years, I would come home from, my big shot stuff, go in the study, close the door, and say, I don't know who the flip I am. Give me a 3-piece Armani. I can go do whatever I need to do and be anybody you like. But when I come home, I don't have any clue who I am. Like those words were said audibly and not once. That kind of feeling of being completely lost, even though success was, from the outside, everybody thought, what,
Yes. Okay, so when did the ship hit the fan?
August of 2007. I was single again for the third time. I was living as a single dad with 4 of my 10 children living with me. 3 were grown up and married, and 3 were living with my third ex-wife. I came home from work on a Friday afternoon, and I was going to go out and party for the weekend, and that's when I had the $3,000 a week cocaine habit, but I was making enough money that none of that mattered. And I suddenly had the urge to turn on the television, and that doesn't sound like anything, except I didn't watch TV. So I picked up the remote and realized I didn't know how to turn it on. So I had to ask one of my kids, and my 16-year-old daughter, she punched some buttons and, threw the remote at me, dipweed, and it landed on a program I'd never heard of, which isn't a surprise because I'd never heard of any of them. And it was a reality TV show called Intervention, which I don't know if it's on anymore, but, it is what it sounds like. Family staging interventions for busted loved ones, right? And the protagonist was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. So I watched my life for about 10 minutes, and I said, yeah, screw this, I'm not watching it. And I turned it off and did some other stuff and was going to go out to party, and it would have been for the weekend. I might have come back Monday. And I was absolutely compelled to turn the TV back on. So this time I did. This time I knew how. And that program started over. And no, I didn't have a recording device. And no, it wasn't on the schedule. And no, it can't do that. I understand that. But it did. It freaked me out. And I'm like, oh, crap. So I sat down and watched it. It was not long, half an hour program. And it went really badly. The guy yelled at his family and swore he didn't have a problem and stomped out of the intervention. And, you know the drill. But it freaked me out. So instead of going out to party, I went to bed. And when I went to bed, I went to hell. And what I mean by that is I felt like I was somewhere out of body, and I was in a room, a large room, like a theater, with stages up there. And the scenes on the stage were all scenes of life, from my life, and they were scenes all focused on suffering. The suffering that had been inflicted on me growing up, and the suffering I had inflicted on everybody else as an addict and a lousy partner and a liar, a compulsive liar, and everything else. And the level of emotional intensity I cannot describe. And it went on forever. And after a long time, a voice said very audibly, "It is enough." I woke up, and the intensity had been such that the entire bed sheets and everything were soaking wet, like wring out wet was the intensity of the experience. But that wasn't what bothered me most. What bothered me most was the sun was shining into windows, and the windows faced west. And I got up, and it was 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So I'd been somewhere for nearly 18 hours. And I sat and thought about this, and I realized, well, I'd been invited to change. I have no idea what to do, where to start, who to talk to, how to do any of this. No idea at all. But I knew one thing. And the one thing I knew was I'm done. So I threw away $1,000 worth of drugs I had laying around, because I always did. And I quit cold turkey that day. And that got me sober, but it didn't do anything about how I got there. Right? So that was part 2. And part 2 started the next week. Monday, I went back to work knowing that I had to get away from everything and start life over again, but didn't know what to do yet. And because of the position that I used to get free stuff all the time, free expensive tickets to this and box seats to that and, that kind of thing. And one of the things I got was a pair of tickets to a Yo-Yo Ma concert. And, if you know classical music, you know who that is. And if you don't, you don't. But I'm like, oh, man, they were like $1,000 tickets. So I'm going. But I thought, I don't have anybody to give this other ticket to. I don't want to waste this. And so I asked in the groups that I managed who likes classical music. And a lady in one of the groups said, well, I do. And I said, have I ever given you anything before? And she said, no. I said, okay, fine, see you there. So I gave her the ticket. We met at the venue. The concert was amazing. And as of the concert, I'm now 2.5 weeks stone cold sober. Halfway through the show, I had this feeling come over me that I recognized from a couple of weeks before. And this voice said to me, you need to marry this woman.
This is Joy. She's lovely.
And I said, you're insane. I said, I have screwed that up 3 times. I have no idea how to do this. There is no way. Later that night, we were backstage because they were backstage passes and tickets to the reception and the whole 9 yards. And the voice came back and said, and you need to tell her tonight. And I went crazy. I thought, if I do that, she can have me arrested for harassment. And truthfully, I don't know her well enough to know if she has a relationship. Like, I don't know that. But you don't win those arguments. So I did, and it went about like you would have expected. She told me I was crazy and, you're nuts. But she didn't call the cops, and she didn't have a relationship. And in the next 3 weeks, she had her own set of experiences. And about 3 or 4 weeks later, I walked away from millions of dollars of contracts, and she resigned from her whole career. We walked off into the sunset, and this coming December, we'll have our 17th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And the most interesting thing in the world is her name is Joy. So she was literally the other half. She was an angel sent to help me learn how to tell the truth, how to be a person, how to have a friend, how to be a friend. And the interesting thing about all this is it didn't do any of the work. I got sober and I got some help, but I still had to go do it. So that was the start in August and September of 2007.
So let me ask you, how did you make sense of these, and I use the word spiritual experiences?
Every single one of us has spiritual nudgings. We pay attention to them or we don't. We beat them down or we pretend them away. We explain them or we yield. That happens all through our lives. Finally, the way I think of it is, look, if there was anyone that should have been left at the bottom of the canyon, I was the poster child of a disaster. What it shows me is it's never too late, and it doesn't matter where you've been. I just finally said, it is enough. I listened. It is enough. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do it. And I don't even know where this goes. And I don't care anymore. I'm going. And that's the kind of commitment that, at least for me, it took to change and to get moving on a path. So I chose, I guess, is the answer, which I think is always the answer. I chose to listen.
To listen. Yeah, that's a really, really important. I mean, I kind of really want to highlight that, because we do get these nudges. We get these little voices, take your umbrella. It's cold out. Wear a sweater. Do this, do that, And so when we start to pay attention, life kind of shifts a bit and things begin to start to work in kind of miraculous ways. So I appreciate that.
It's completely true, and we all get them. It's just that I had ignored them so long that mine were a 2x4. Like loud and hard. And I still could have ignored them and thought I was crazy and done all kinds of stuff. But I just finally chose to hear the voice. It is enough.
Yeah. And so from that, the major depressive disorder and the drug abuse and the alcohol, whatever other addictions, and you began to start to see something different and behave differently. And then how did you I know where you are today. I read your bio for anybody that just kind of came in late, but how have you turned this, Kellan, into something?
This is all done for my own healing. I mean, I had to go start getting help. So the first thing I tell people is I had to get help. I couldn't do this alone. I'd been messing with it for 52 years. So at age 52, I finally decided to tell the truth, go get some help. I wasn't even very good at it. I mean, I ruined a bunch of shrinks to start with by trying to handle and manage the sessions. I'm sure the first few I saw thought I was nuts. It took me a long time to learn to just go talk and then shut up and be vulnerable and listen and sort of enter into a collaborative relationship. I didn't know how to do that. I mean, I'd been CEO of a lot of stuff. I'm in charge of shit, right? No. And so I had to get that learned. I had to learn. I'd never had a friend in my life. And Joy was that. I never have anybody I could trust and talk to, even though I'd been married 3 times. And so I had to learn all that and begin to do that work. In that process, as I began to get the help I needed and start healing and getting a different view of life, I realized very quickly, well, after 2 or 3 years, I realized, I could really help some folks. I really could help people with this. What I have been through, what I have now learned. And it was that realization that made me realize, okay, I need to do that. And that's what got me started writing. I didn't start writing any of the books. Like you mentioned, I have 19 books. I've just started number 20. Until then, I didn't, and every one of them has come out of my own work and journey and discovery and healing. And when I do things and I think, this could really help. And so I'll write a book about it, what I studied and learned. And so that's sort of the process. And after I decided I could help people with this, I thought, I don't know what that really is. I think that's coaching. And so I looked into that and, hired a coach or two and took some coaching programs to explore it. Turned out that it was okay. And I really sucked at marketing to start with and really sucked at selling coaching and went through all the drama that you always go through when you start a business. And now all that's in the past. And here I am today, and I love it, and I love every minute. My coaching practice is full, and I have 19 going on 20 books. But the road here has been over a lot of flipping broken glass and, the process that it always is.
And that's the beauty of your story, and everybody who's been on the story. And my two guests have both been on the show with their own really amazing stories. And so I know that they can relate.
Big time.
Right. And so that's the purpose of doing this. I really want young leaders to watch this, and people who think that, oh my God, they've got everything together, and oh, this life is so great, and oh, this is, and they have this and I don't have it, and so on. And everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. And
that truth right there is what led me to write one of the books. After I'd written 9 or 10 of them, I realized I'd created a really good system to help people identify and use their life experience. And so I wrote that book too, and it's called The Story Arc: Practical and Persuasive Magic for Speakers, Authors, and Storytellers. So I could help people find and codify and write the book or create the program or the speech about their own story, because I agree with what you just said. Everybody's got a story and it's valuable. And so that's exactly the process. And anyone who watches this that thinks you don't have one, you're wrong. You do. Anybody that thinks you can't get there from where you are, you can. I don't know how much broken glass there is in between, but you can get there.
So beautiful. You're our poster child for the transformational story. Again, we're kind of kidding around a little bit, but it's life is hard. Life is not easy. We're given certain things. You were given as a child. You were all given as a child. Some of the things took us to great places and great successes, and other things we've had to kind of undo and relearn and redo and bring our best selves. But I think the joy, Kellan, of listening to you is, and this is what we wish for everybody, that you do find those sparks within you and that they become the driver, not the external world become the driver about how I'm supposed to be this and I'm supposed to be that. And no. I am who I am comes from the inside out. And then I build my world and create my world on that. And, whether you're a solopreneur, you're starting out, whether you're a kid, whether you're, my age, I'll have a birthday tomorrow, kind of a big one. And, but I'm inspired now than ever before, honestly, So I got a couple.
I couldn't agree more. That, you mentioned in the bio near-death experience, and that wasn't what I just talked about. 11 years later, in 2018, I actually did die in the ICU here in Edmonton, Alberta. And that was 11 years after that experience that I described to you. And I contracted a fatal illness and, just died. And I had 3 conversations with God at the door between life and eternity. And that, of course, spawned another couple of books. But I viewed that as a blessing and a cherry on top. Even though I was in a coma for 17 days and lost so much weight I couldn't walk, and it ruined my lungs and a whole bunch of other things that I'm still recovering from 6 years later. That was a great blessing. It was also an affirmation, a invincible affirmation, as it were, that I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing, and so forth. And so, the life unfolds in all these interesting ways. And the more we choose to listen and to just allow the beauty and power of life to unfold instead of fighting and trying to control it all, the more fun it gets.
Yes. Yes. And we are just about out of time. It goes so quickly. But you packed a lot in a very, very short period of time. And what I like to do at the end of the show is just, anybody that has any comments, feel free, jump in. Bob, you want to go? And then.
No, I was just going to say, Killian, like so many things that it just hit me with. I heard a great saying the other day, life gets lifey. And, it sort of is, right? The other thing I heard, just sort of having, if you will, I'll just say, been in the rooms, we were talking about how important that folding chair was. You go in and you sit down and you listen. And the fact of the matter is everybody sitting in the folding chair is all there. No matter who you are, you're all equal. You're all in that same folding chair for the same reasons. And back to sit down and listen. And there's a higher power out there that can give you some direction. And for me, I finally got to see some color in my world, not just black and white.
That's good. That's cool.
Awesome.
All right. And for you, Adriano?
I guess I'm just curious, Kellan, were you able to go back and mend various fences, or and how hard was that to do?
That's still a work in progress.
Mhm.
One of the books I wrote is a book called Forgiveness, A Journey of Courage to a Place of Freedom and Power. And I hold nothing but compassion, grace, and patience for everyone, for everything, but some of my kids don't talk to me still. And that'll be fine. That's okay. There will be a day. Some of my brothers and sisters are still angry. I was the rotten black sheep of the family and, everything like that. But I hold nothing except I was, taken off the Christmas card list a few times and disinvited to the family reunion and then, re-invited and, that kind of thing. And that used to hurt and everything else. And now it isn't anything except I love them. I live in a place of absolutely having learned to love them and allow them to be wherever they are on their journey. So that's a work in progress. And
I get
the
it.
most important thing is it carries no burden for me any longer.
Mhm.
Right.
Got it.
It's a wonderful book called How to Forgive But Not Forget. We remember, but when we hold on to the angst, it takes away from us. Honestly,
Right. Yeah.
for the other person that much. It takes up a lot of psychic space, and there are beautiful ways to. I remember, but I'm not holding it anymore.
Well, if I can waste a couple minutes of time real quick. So my father who's now passed away, he hadn't been back to Italy in, I want to say 40 years or something like that at one point in time. He came here in 1958. I was born in 59. So he hadn't gone back in like 40 or 50 years, had not seen any of his brothers and sisters because he had a falling out with them. So he decided he was going to go back and see one of his brothers. And I wasn't there, but he drives, and we live in the foothills of the Carrara Mountains in Tuscany, so it's very beautiful. And so where he lives, you can't drive the car all the way up. You got to park the car and you have to walk all the way up. And so him, my uncle, and my mother are there. And he tells my uncle, he goes, I don't want you or Giovanna, my mother, to come because I don't know if he's going to pull out a gun and shoot me. So he literally walks up there and then he sees his brother and they don't remember what they were fighting about. 50, they just didn't remember. So sometimes you have this weight on you that is ridiculous because it's actually not even there. It's not even there. It's not even a thing anymore. So I always remember that.
Family issues and family fighting.
Yeah, when I argue with my dad,
and that's a whole other ball of wax, honestly.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're taking care of my mother right now, and it's just, we got to be on the same page, or else it doesn't work, right? So.
And we'll talk.
Well, thank you, Kellan, so much.
Yes. And I want to thank both of you and Bob and Chilo and everybody that's listening after this. This is worth listening to. Kellan and I talked a while ago and he told me a bit of his story and I said, you got to come and talk about this because it is under the hood. all the
Yeah.
things that were happening for you and that were going on out of your conscious awareness. But and the other thing that I want to say to a lot of people is, it's not that we don't know that there's a problem or we don't want to get better. We just don't know how.
Mhm.
Don't know how to do it. And that's where, people like Kellan and the work that I do, and people like me, and we've been trained, we've had experiences, we kind of know the path. So when there's conflict, when there's hurt, conflict at home, conflict, inner conflict, outer conflict in the boardrooms, wherever you are, we take ourselves wherever we go. And the more you commit to your own personal transformation, personal growth, the better the world. So thank you so much, everybody, for staying with us. And this is Tina from Mastery Under Pressure, sponsoring Under the Hood. Have a great day.
Thanks.